Katz from Katz Architecture representing Terrara Park Pavilion. This project came from the City of White, who ran a design competition amongst their panel architects. We were fortunate to win that competition and through that the commission to realise the building. Part of what they asked for in their competition was a building with a dynamic roof form, and for something that lifted these buildings that have really quite a profound social influence on our society. Sport plays a big part in Australian life, and these sorts of buildings feature in our reserves. We were immediately struck with the view of Mt Dandenong in the background and the connection that it has to the site, and that provided a profound influence on how we went about thinking about this site. And then looking at some historic imagery that we found on the council website, there's this green trail that runs from the Terrara Park site, which is through here, and this green trail that sort of runs right through and connected right back to Mt Dandenong. We had that feeling that there's a visual connection, but there's much more than a visual connection. There's quite an environmental connection that runs through, and indeed a flood level that connects with our site. When we thought of positioning a building here, we really wanted to do something that sort of, first and foremost, thrust the building into position for maximum use of the main field of soccer and Wirral. Cricket's also serviced the Oval. It's quite a large reserve. We wanted to maintain connections through the site, and so the building tapers, becomes very thin at the ends to really encourage movement around. And the shaping of the building starts to address the periphery fields as well, so we didn't want to forget about those other fields that are further apart. In terms of looking at the planning of the building, one key aspect was a lot of those buildings have privacy functions with change rooms and things that don't activate facades. And so the rotation of the wet areas meant that we could really enable a better reading of glass down to the floor, so that we could break down that sort of high level band that you often have on building type buildings and bring in some of the fanfare of the buildings and interior design as well. So that mountain that's in the background really provided a spiritual base. We were interested in its folding form, and we explored a butterfly, or a number of roof forms really, but it resulted in a butterfly roof form, and that does three really key things for a building like this. It hides many of those services that are necessarily evil, that come out of those change rooms for amenity and ventilation, provides safe access without having unnecessary handles and things up there, and we managed to design a pretty sophisticated drainage system that is concealed, and so we don't have lots of downpipes and things hanging off the building, which must sort of have a bit of an inversion too. And so we really tried to develop something that has very folded forms, quite a dynamic edge with the horizontal plane of the terrain, angle cladding that leads in and energises that main social space at the front for a humble single-storey building, a 6.5 metre sort of rise at the apex that really heralds the presence of the main social function. And as you move around the building, it really changes faces. There's no front door, there's no back door, all the faces are active. And so at the top is a more recessive edge that folds down to the ground plane and sort of links in with the smaller residential scale that is on the west. And on the west, alternatively, it's a raised salute that really offers a connection to the main arrival of the building. And this is that main arrival. You can see that the rear gets quite narrow, and that narrowness, of course, generates terrific natural light into the building and good cross ventilation. It invites you either side, north or south. There is no back door, you will arrive at the right place. And that form that sort of twists up and folds out there in cantilevers, clad in timber, animated at night. These buildings operate a lot at night time, so they need to look energetic and inspiring for the people that use them. The building's nestled around existing trees that we work very hard with an arborist to maintain. You can see the timber deck that features at the front steps. That's not an aesthetic feature, that's very much a permeable feature to really protect that tree, and it's always beautiful to have an established tree in the final photo. As you come around that south edge, looking out over the fields, the social space is certainly clear defined with the raised form. It features a pretty dramatic screen. We're facing south, which of course is prevailing weather, so we realise that really a roof up to 6.5 metres doesn't provide a lot of weather protection. So the idea of this screen was to really use some pressed metal that folds down. It cantilevers a massive 4.5 metres out at that point from a whole roof that is cantilevered. It brings the height of that down protect the spectators and the viewing. That extension as it comes out, that 4.5 metres, sort of shows the thrusting nature of the building into the field, and so it's really right in the action. And the important part of these buildings is really stimulating the community about how they do a little bit more than just service the functions that are necessary within them. And so the ledges that are around the edges of the building for people to gather, to sit, to invite the dog walkers into the activities that happen as well is certainly a key part of that. And then the large screen, the glass in the opening, and the drama at night time, the warmth of the timber, and here the connection between both sides is really, really critical. So not turning our back on the playground that's on the other side, and important connections that maintain on the north side of the building as well. So it's a two-phase social space, terrific for cross ventilation. The ceiling fans in there for really a passive sort of response. It's a very passive building. And as we walk down that side, you didn't want the building to look like an object that's landed from outer space. And so there's terraces and stairs and extensions of platforms that finger into the landscape and provide an undulating edge that's a little bit softer, helps to get people's dirt off their shoes as they come into it. Every face is really quite different. As you walk around the building, this is the edge that folds down. The roof here gets really pulled down a bit further as well. You've got a viewing area down there to service those fields at the lower end. For those that are fortunate enough to be relegated to that end of the field. And you can see the northern circulation path that wraps around the front end of the building. I call it the front end, you can also say it's the back end, but there is no front and back. And this front facade, looking at the playground, also extends out with a series of terraces. We tried to avoid some spaghetti handrails with the use of some timber sculptural forms and other seating ledges along this edge that activate that face as well, and then conceal the accessible walkway that links back to the main arrival at the western end. And then seen at night too, getting the sense of that transparency from the north face as it looks in, and the animation at night with the walkways. And I guess the reason we thought this building was important is it starts to lift the standard of what these pavilions typically do. It's a humble, small building, but they have a pretty profound influence in the way they influence Australian social culture and sport.